You have accessed the podcast of OA, located deep within Sector 14845 and powered by the Emerald Light of Will. The podcast of OA is your guide to the Green Lantern universe. Hosted by Lanterns Myron Rumsey and Bill Giancoli, the podcast of OA begins now.
Welcome back to the podcast of OA. This is episode 108. I'm Bill Giancoli, and I'm joined, as always, my friend Myron Rumsey. Myron, how are you on this lovely evening?
I'm doing really well, Bill. Been a rough couple of weeks. We'll talk a little bit about that a little later on. But we have a lot of great comics to talk about. We're going to talk a little bit about Green Lanterns issues 6 through 8. Or excuse me, 8 through 10, and Hal Jordan and the Green Lantern Corps 6 through 8, and talk a little bit about the coming of the Phantom Lantern, the return of Volthoom, the return of Starro, and Brainiac versus the Green Lantern Corps. So a lot of really cool stuff, and we have a really great listener feedback email that I want to share with everybody. So we have a lot to talk about and a lot to look forward to. So stick around, and after the break, we'll start talking some comics.
If you're ever in the southern tier of New York and you're looking to satisfy your comic needs, head on over to Heroes Your Mom Threw Out Comic Shop, located at 128 West 14th Street in Elmira. You can also check out their website at heroesyourmomthrewout.com. Stop in and enjoy the most extensive collection of comics in the southern tier of New York. Once again, it's Heroes Your Mom Threw Out Comic Shop in Elmira, New York.
Bill, we're going to start out talking about the Green Lanterns book, issues 8 through 10, which is kind of the end of the Family Matters story, and then jumping into the Phantom Lantern. So, what did you think about these issues?
Let's put it this way. I think there's an audience for this book.
Uh-huh.
First and foremost, I think there is an audience for this book. I don't know if I'm one of those, readers. It's not grabbing me right now. Well, let me just start off. Okay, so we have the Family Matters issues. I kind of get where they're trying to go with it. I appreciate it. They're trying to build the character of like who these lanterns are. And they're really, I think, trying to ground them in Earth. These are Earth lanterns. And I think they're trying to go back to, I guess, how being, taking somebody out of, like, Hal owns the universe, but these guys are just around. They're local. You can talk to them. You see them around Halloween, walking around in their costumes, cosplaying for real. So they're walking around with their local people, and their stories are really simple that way. And I can't fault them on that, but it's just not grabbing me. It's not grabbing my attention right now. And that's I think that's all I have to say about that. And now you have the Phantom Lantern in there, and we were just discussing this while we weren't recording. I was like, isn't it just the White Lantern? It can switch between things, and you made some good points there. But I don't know. I don't know how. I'm just not liking it. I'm kind of reading it. Because it is Green Lantern fiction, so I'm enjoying it for that, just seeing where it's going. But overall, I just find it, I don't know, after being out in space, everything seems so mundane,
Right. It's funny, back when, during the Jeff Johns era, one of the complaints was that, we spent too much time in space and we were never on Earth and dealing with Earth matters. And this is all that. And I almost wonder if we had more of a balance, it might be more interesting. I know I struggle, and people who listen to the show know I struggle with this book. And I realize it's new reader friendly. I'm worried that it's not really telling them what they need to know about Green Lanterns, and it's not really portraying the Green Lanterns the way I think they should be. And I know that's just my perspective. It's not everybody's. I just, as a longtime fan, I'm really struggling with it. If it wasn't for doing the reviews for the site and doing it for the podcast, I would skip it. And that's hard for me to do. I haven't skipped a Green Lantern book since the Larfleeze series because I thought it was so bad. And I feel kind of the same way about this, but I have to admit that once we get to the Phantom Lantern story, my interest is a little more piqued by that. I struggled with the whole Halloween issue and seeing Simon and Jessica decide to go trick-or-treating to look for Rami versus just asking their ring, where's the Guardian? Or something to that effect. Couldn't you use the ring to do something? And I don't know. It just... I don't know. I just really had problems with that. But I think once we got to the Frank Leminski story and his backstory, to me, was very engaging. I think Sam Humphries is a good writer, but maybe it depends on what the subject matter is for me as a reader. I thought the way he dealt with Frank Leminski and his backstory and how he was kind of the Hal that wasn't quite good enough. He's in the same place, same time. He's a pilot. He happens to be the first guy that Hal ever rescued, and it becomes that hero worship thing. And he takes it to the nth degree. And then you see how twisted it's made his ideology and how he deals with things, because he's willing to burn a house to get this ring to give what he finally thinks he deserves. So his sense of right and wrong is askew because of what he's trying to achieve. And he's very much, the end justifies the means kind of a guy. So, I like that. I'm not sure what the deal with Volthoom is. And, it was confusing when Jeff brought Volthoom back for Justice League The Darkseid War. Which Volthoom are we talking about now? This appears to be the Volthoom that was in the first Lantern storyline. And it's almost like he's... I don't know, Bill, if you're familiar with the Harry Potter books.
A little bit.
He's almost like Voldemort after... after Harry was born and he tried to kill Harry, and he was impacted by the spell he tried to cast. Voldemort was basically living off of little things here and there and trying to sustain himself. And this Volthoom is kind of that way. He's kind of leeching off of emotions.
Right.
And he's the one that's helping Frank Leminski get this ring. For what purpose? I don't know. Obviously...
He seems pretty powerful.
Yeah.
I mean, it didn't seem like he took out that Guardian pretty, easily.
Yeah, he did. And I just don't know whether he's going to use Frank Leminski as a power source for himself until he gets, he's tricking Leminski to use the ring, and he's staying in close proximity so that he can get stronger, leeching off of that ring, off the Phantom ring. And then once he gets strong enough, is he going to turn on Leminski? That's kind of where I think it's going to go. And that part to me is interesting. I had, one of my criticisms of this whole thing with Rami was you're two Green Lanterns, and you have this guy with the most dangerous weapon in the universe, and everybody's coming after it, supposedly. And you don't think about going to the Justice League until you finally recover the ring, and... Jessica is afraid to go into space, so that's the solution. That's when they finally think of something rational, instead of going to their teammates in the first place. And then they're so distracted by a simple house fire. It takes two Green Lanterns to put out a house fire. And
but yet they're going to take on the most powerful weapon.
Right.
Universe.
And while Amy's arguing with the brother, Frank Leminski tiptoes. I think of him almost like Wile E. Coyote doing the tiptoe through the...
Here's the thing. This is where I want to step back, I think, out of myself when I read this book. Mm-hmm. I think there is a reader for this.
Oh, there is.
I think the target is a younger audience. Mm-hmm. I think this is your PG-13, trying to broaden the market a little bit. Whereas we've seen with Sinestro and some of the, even the Hal Jordan's pretty graphic stuff, and dealing with a little bit heavier storylines, a little bit more complexities within the characters. Where this is just getting very back to basics. Making cookies with the family, learning your powers, a house fire being something that, like you said, they had to show teamwork for that, when honestly a house fire, when you're a Green Lantern that goes out against like armadas and stuff like that should be the, hey, I got this, boom. That should be almost like day 30.
Yeah. It shouldn't take 2 Green Lanterns to put out a house fire. But the whole purpose of that scene, other than to get them away from Rami in the Phantom Ring, was so that Jessica could rescue a little girl and then have a conversation with her in the ambulance. And you get the little girl like, I didn't know a girl could be a Green Lantern. And that means I can be a Green Lantern too. And that's the whole purpose for Jessica Cruz, right there in a nutshell.
Well, okay. Yes, I think there is. It is a direct appeal to young female readers, which I don't think is a bad thing. It is a growing, segment, I think, of comics, and I think you're seeing a much bigger influence within the comic world, whether it's Green Lantern or not. But that's a market you can tap into, and I don't think something said, but I think it is a younger audience, and I think it's hard for us to read. I think it's harder for us to read this. I guess I don't know, with younger eyes. I guess we've been hardened by taxes and work. Yeah. This is like, hey, I could be a Green Lantern one day. Both stories.
So this is the participation trophy lanterns. Okay.
Yeah. I want a ring, so I should get it. The most powerful one, which has all of them now. I wanted it that bad.
So the Phantom Ring is interesting because it's kind of, I think you alluded to it earlier, it's a little bit like the White Lantern ring, but what's a little different is that the ring automatically shifts the spectrum through the emotions based on the emotions of the wearer, whereas the White Lantern ring really requires that you control the emotions and choose what you're going to channel. So that's kind of one of the differences between the two. We see when Leminski gets the ring on, it's immediately green because, this is what he's wanted his entire life since being rescued by Hal Jordan years ago. And then once he's scared, it switches automatically to yellow. I thought it was funny that Jessica can't manage to make a construct, and here this guy is 5 minutes with the ring on, and he's got this really scary yellow ring construct already coming at you. But it's interesting in that regard that,
well, he's been wanting to be a Green Lantern.
Yeah, he's and it wasn't a Lotus thing. It was but
her squid plant.
But whatever. But I think it's an interesting concept in that it automatically shifts itself. It's almost like the White Lantern ring is driving with a manual drive, and the Phantom ring is kind of automatic. To compare it to a car, transmission of a car. And now, one of the things that I find problematic is some of the art continuity problems. In issue 7, for example, when they were making the cookies, Simon got his arm broke.
Right.
He's, just before then, he had his arm broke. He's in a cast. But later that night, the cast magically has disappeared, and he doesn't have a broken arm anymore. It's, since then, it's been all fine. It was just a flesh wound.
Merely a flesh wound.
And we still have the disappearing, reappearing gun, and we've, had the eye tattoo missing. And I just want to see the book. It's hard for me to take it seriously when the art is so inconsistent. And I don't mean art quality in terms of the drawings of the faces and things, but just the continuity. I mean, if we're going to insist that Simon Baz carry a pistol, then the pistol should be on his frickin' leg every time you turn around. I mean, would you draw Batman without his utility belt? No, you wouldn't. You wouldn't draw Superman without the symbol on his chest. So if this is important, then artistically, these guys need to be consistent.
Well, I think they need to work the gun out, to be honest with you, in general.
Co-signed.
I don't think... I get where they were trying to go with it, but it isn't significant enough, in any of the storytelling, that I don't know why you would just have a gun on him in general. Unless it's, a subtle nod to, just gun ownership. I don't know. But it really doesn't.
It was because originally when Simon Baz first appeared, a long time ago, I know he's supposed to be a rookie, but he's not.
Oh, I get it.
But,
I get why he does it.
Yeah, he's got that ring from Hal and Sinestro that isn't reliable, but it hasn't been unreliable in how long?
I think it was great. Let's put it this way. The moment where he used it with like Sinestro or something, was this, or who was it?
It was Sinestro.
Was it Sinestro where he pulls it on? And I'm like,
yeah.
That's great as a new Lantern. It's like a last resort. You remember, and it did its job, kind of.
Yeah,
yeah.
But
I mean, after that, it's like you don't really need it. It just fell off, and if they're forgetting it in the art, then just get it out of the way. And I think again, that's where it almost conflicts with my theory of this is meant for younger readers. I think the gun hardens it a bit, and I'm kind of like, that's why I think disappointed in the series, because I don't know, maybe I'm hoping that if it's like for younger readers, I totally get it, but that gun, or the importance of having the gun there, and they still reference it in the story, tells me otherwise.
Right. Well, and it'll be interesting. I think there are definitely people who enjoy the book, and more power to them. But, I don't know how long it's going to sustain itself. How long can you play off of Jessica's anxiety and the fact that they're new before that becomes tiresome? I mean, people have been complaining for a while now about the inner monologues at the beginning of each book. I have to say, I don't know whether Sam Humphries is listening to critical feedback from some of the reviewers, but the last issue or so didn't have any of that, hi, I'm Jessica Cruz, hi, I'm Simon Baz, which was a marked improvement from my perspective. So I'm hoping that things are changing as things go. But, it was funny. I was talking to our local comic shop owner not too long ago, and I was asking him how the books are selling. And he said, I have to keep tweaking and adjusting, but sales were strong in the beginning. I've adjusted my orders appropriately, but in talking to some of my other fellow shop owners, they haven't started cutting their orders down as much as they normally would, and they're stuck with stacks of books. And I said, well, anything in particular about these books? And he said, well, they've been ordering heavy on the Green Lanterns book and a couple of other of the DC books that they were ordering heavy on, thinking they were going to sell more, and keep thinking that people are going to come in and get them, and they don't. So and again, I'm not trying to disparage the book because I don't particularly care for it, but I'm wondering if this is as successful as DC thinks it is. And over time, will we see things change? I don't know. Like I said, I'm not a big fan of it, but obviously there are people that are, and more power to them. I think the Phantom Lantern storyline is far more engaging than the first storyline. So,
by far,
yeah,
I think so. I mean, and even the story of what's his name again? Frank
Leminski, yeah.
Frank Leminski. It started off well, and I was kind of enjoying it, but I felt it again, almost like the little girl in the ambulance. The ring gets right to him, and it's like, oh no, wait, and it supposedly goes to Simon Baz.
Yeah.
And I was like, I was getting where it was going without that final, like, just in case you weren't sure about it.
Well, I guess maybe heavy-handed is the...
Very heavy-handed.
Yeah.
But again, that's what makes me think maybe this was meant for, like, younger readers, because that's what you get, and
it's rated teen like the other book is, so I don't know. But a year from now, I could be singing a completely different tune. If I stick around with it long enough, a year from now, I may be a huge Jessica Simon fan. Odds makers.
hey, let's put it this way. If we didn't support the Green Lantern, we go out and we buy these every month, or twice a month. So, and we give it a chance. So I think right there is your. I think no matter how we might be critical of it, I think in general, I mean we've been supporting it.
Right, I'm supporting it with my dollars.
Yeah, we're keeping by those dollars. Keep that story going for the people who like it.
Mm-hmm. That's very true. Yeah. And I know I'm not buying it in paper, which is hard for me because I'm a completionist. I did the same thing with Larfleeze. It was very hard for me to not buy a paper copy. I'm buying it digitally to review, but I'm not buying a paper copy. Whereas with the Hal Jordan and the Green Lantern Corps book, I'm buying it in both because I'm collecting the paper version for my collection. Maybe eventually I'll change my tune and go back and buy all the back issues, but at this point I'm not. But Phantom Lantern definitely is an uptick for me.
I say there, boy. Sir? Yes, you. Mr. Scrooge? What day is it? Why, it's New Comic Book Day today, sir. New comic... I haven't missed it. I'm not too late. Happy day. Timmy. Sir? Happy New Comic Book Day. Happy New Comic Book Day to you, sir. Happy New Comic Book Day to us all. Happy New Comic Book Day to us all. Happy New Comic Book Day, everyone.
Get Your Geek On Radio wishes you a merry new comic book day.
So, Myron, we've been talking about the Green Lanterns, and we've been pretty critical of it. And we've said maybe some very mean things. I'm sorry, that's not correct. You've said some very mean things. No, we've been critical of it. I think that's a fair assessment, right? I don't think we've, ever given this really big thumbs up.
That would be accurate, yeah.
That would be accurate. Okay, so we're just trying to, but I think there are people who are enjoying this book and they seem very impassioned by it, so impassioned that they, it may push the limits of good taste and fair play, and you've had a little bit of run in with this, so I'll let you take it from there.
Well, yeah, in all full disclosure, I didn't even share this with Bill until after it got bad. But, I as somebody who writes reviews, I'm always open to listening to people's criticisms and suggestions. And, I make mistakes like anybody else, but never has anybody gotten nasty. But over the last month and a half, I was getting some things in social media and through the contact me form and the email address that went beyond criticism of my reviews to personal attacks. And, I didn't share it. I didn't share it on the podcast. I didn't share it with you, Bill. I didn't even share it with my own family, to be quite honest, because I was just trying to let it just bounce off, and realizing that, people are emotionally invested, and that's good. And if they're lashing out at me because I disagree with them, that says more about them than it does me. But maybe 3 weeks ago, it just got nastier than it really needed to be, and I just started to feel a little down about it. And I was like, maybe I should stop doing it, and maybe I should stop reviewing things and stop the site and stop the podcast, and not as a play for sympathy or to make a online social media thing over it. But, there was one day I was a little very discouraged, and I posted something on Facebook and on Twitter just saying, maybe it's time I hang it up. And people were like, they were very responsive and just said, you shouldn't give it up. You have to be honest to yourself, and you have to be, we appreciate the honesty, and we appreciate your perspective, and even if we don't agree with it sometimes. And that was very uplifting, and it was kind of a little bit of a boost we need. And then I'd gotten the email that we're going to read here in a few minutes, and it just reminded me that there's a place for everybody's perspective and point of view, and if you don't like it, that's fine. But to resort to juvenile, playground antics, that's just, that doesn't say much for the people who kind of make those kind of statements. And my challenge to those people is rather than come at me on a personal level and rather than attack me, why don't you take your passion and your love for the Green Lanterns book and do something creative with it that provides people with something uplifting? If you don't like my message, then why don't you put out your own message? Start your own website. Start your own podcast and talk it up.
Get your own Bill. Bill.
There you go. Because I do this because I love the characters. I love the mythology. It's been a part of my life from a very early age through now. And I do this stuff because I enjoy it. This stuff isn't free. We pay for the podcast hosting. We pay for the URL. I pay for picture storage. So there's a financial part of this. We don't have a show sponsor who pays us money. We don't get any money from advertising. I do it because I love it, and I put my time into it. If you go back and look at the blog of OA, since it started, I don't know how many years ago. I think it's been 6 years now. I have done. Let me just go to the post section here really quick. I have written almost 1,500 articles, and that's a significant time investment on my part to read books, review them, hunt for news, line up interviews, and so on. And I'm not going anywhere because I do enjoy it. But if you feel the same amount of passion for Green Lanterns, then put your money where your mouth is instead of putting your foot in it. And go ahead and do something creative. And let people who enjoy the Green Lanterns book come to your site or listen to your podcast and revel in it with you, because that's what it's about. And I do this because I love it. I do it because I want to have a place for Green Lantern fans to go and hear honest opinion and news, and to be just another part of their fandom. And if they get something out of it, that's great. If you don't like it, don't come here and listen to it, and don't come and read it. The choice is yours. But I'm not going to change myself to make you happy. So if you don't like it, do something about it on your own and do something creative. Take that energy or the angst or anger you feel at me and turn it into something positive for yourself. Because in the end, if you're just making yourself frustrated and angry, you're not helping yourself any. So, like I said, put your money where your mouth is. Do something positive with it. And that's all I got to say about that.
I think fuchsia is the color of angst.
the fuchsia lantern core.
Yeah. Well, no, I think, I also think if you really do want to share your opinion and you want to defend something like this, and you want to do it appropriately, we have a voicemail line.
Sure, yeah.
You can write to us.
Mm-hmm.
And say, hey, we'll answer your questions and stuff. Or like you said, put out your own stuff. I mean, it's not unheard of. We have 108 episodes that says we could do it.
Right,
you could do it.
Right. I started this website because, there was a website that influenced me a lot when, during the days when Hal had turned to Parallax and Kyle was there. There was a website called EmeraldDawn.com. And Emerald Dawn was kind of the only place you could really go on the internet at the time and find out Green Lantern news. And they shared news, and we talked a lot about the situation with Hal and Kyle, and it just influenced me a lot. And when that site went away, that was one of the things that led to the creation of the blog of OA, was because that site was gone and there wasn't a resource out there. And I felt like I wanted to be the next person in the chain. I wanted to be the next person. I wanted to be for somebody else what that site was for me. And that's what led me to do this. And so I took that energy I had and went here with it. So, if you're finding motivation for what I do, then do something with it. There are other sites that are out there that, we talked to Dan Bokikio, I think not too long ago. He sent a voicemail or an email talking about how he's doing his own podcast. It's not Green Lantern related, but he took inspiration from what we've done, and he's turned, he's taken what we do and gotten energy out of it, and energy for himself to do something. So even if it's negative energy, to do something positive with it.
Well said.
So we do have a listener email.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I forgot about that.
That's okay. It's a rather lengthy one, but it's an interesting email, and again, it's coming from someone who liked things differently than I liked, but still finds value in what we do.
Hello, Myron. I had to write you and say how great your website and podcast is. Much like you, I have been a Green Lantern fan most of my life. I'm 36 now. I started collecting comic books when I was 12. thanks to Superman number 75, The End. I was at the 1993 NBA All-Star Game with my dad, who was an avid card collector at the time. And as I was going up and down the aisles with him, my eyes fell upon Superman 75 when Superman is flying into heaven and it says, The End. Now, as a fan of the movie from the 80s, I asked the guy, is this really the last issue ever? He said yes, when my dad interrupted and said, of course not, son. He just wants you to buy that comic. Finally, a few months later, I was in Walmart with my dad again, and lo and behold, Adventures of Superman number 500. He lives. I forced my dad to buy that comic for me, and I've been hooked ever since. Ironically, though, it was Superman that made me a Green Lantern fan, because in Reign of the Superman storyline, Green Lantern number 46 was an extra issue to that story that I had to have to complete the collection. And that was my Green Lantern conversion. I was so blown away by his constructs and what he could do, I dropped Superman like a bad date and went exclusive Green Lantern from there. Then, of course, Emerald Twilight happened, Kyle Rayner happened, and the rest is history. Here is my question and why I'm writing to you. And these are all in caps, so I don't know if I captured the font, but that's what happened. Back in 1996-97, when my high school got the internet and a colorful iMac computer, I remember looking up Green Lantern on the internet and finding a website which I thought was the blog of Oa, doing a Bring Back Hal Jordan campaign. It had an awesome this is what Emerald Twilight was supposed to be article and a really cool Emerald Twilight ad of the story that was never to be. Something to do with another set of Guardians coming, and there was a conflict between the old and new Guardians. Was that you? If so, I hated your guts. LOL. I loved Kyle Rayner so much, and I thought, no way do I want this old gray-haired Green Lantern back. I thought Kyle was so cool, and still, of course, like James Bond, fans who grew up with their James Bond felt Kyle was my Green Lantern. Anyway, of course, hindsight is 2020, and holy cow, was bringing Hal back the best decision ever. Jeff Johns, hello. I'm loving this guy's writing right now. Anyway, the other reason I was writing you was your podcast is awesome. This is hilarious. What is hilarious is I am one of those that you said would jump ship with Green Lantern number 20. I actually dropped comics altogether at the New 52 launch because I hated it so much, but kept going with the Green Lantern books because they were not altered that much. But I used number 20, like you said, as my way of saying goodbye. Of course, over the past couple of years, I have itched about wanting to know that what was going on in the Green Lantern universe, and I found your podcast on Stitcher. I started with episode number 1 and went through number 50 in about a month. Of course, I loved it so much I had to keep listening, but the problem was I didn't know what was going on anymore. And hearing episodes 51 through 55 and how you guys liked Lights Out, I had to get back into it. So I bought up Green Lanterns 21 through 52 just a couple of weeks ago on eBay. And thanks to you, I'm reading Green Lantern again. I had to tell you, thank you. So keep up the good work. Thanks for keeping Green Lantern alive. And great job on your website. Sincerely, Lance Cromwell from Texas. Lance, that was awesome. Thank you very much.
I really thought that was a great letter, and it came at such a perfect time. And what Lance is talking about is there was a website. It wasn't the blog of Oa. I started that just about 6 years ago. But there was a couple different websites. There was emeralddawn.com, and then there was another site that was it was a Green Lantern Corps online website. And it eventually became the DCU guide, and they no longer have that information. But actually, and I'm going to put this link in the show notes, they have a link to what the original story for Emerald Twilight was. Those pages have not been deleted, but there's no link to them on the new version of the site. But if you have the URL, you can actually get to those pages and still read it. But it has the original story for Emerald Twilight. And it was probably one of those two sites, or it could even have been the Heat site, although I don't think Heat got that far into having the original story and that kind of stuff. They talked about trying to bring Hal back and such. But I think it goes to show you what positivity can do. And even though, Lance, for him, Kyle was his Green Lantern, he learned to love the entire Green Lantern universe, and I think it's great. I think it's great. He got out of it and we brought him right back in. So that's really awesome. And Lance, I really appreciate it. There was some other information you sent me. I'm going to shoot you an email in response about something else you asked in the email that I kind of edited out of it before I put it up for Bill to read. And I will definitely be getting back to you on it. But thank you so much for finding us and making us a part of your Green Lantern fandom. And I hope that it rekindled your interest. You know, I remember back when Jeff John's last issue came out, and you and I were talking about how this is such a natural jumping off point for people that is the Green Lantern universe going to lose some readership over this because it was such a perfect ending. And I think Lance exactly illustrates that point, that there were people that did say goodbye at that point. And, but a good thing always comes back around again, and here's Lance is again back in the fold. So we're happy to have you, and we hope you keep listening. And I hope you'll write back at some point and tell me what you think about the Green Lanterns book. I don't know if you're reading it or not. I'd love to hear your perspective because you are a newer reader and you're seeing some things through different eyes than I am, and I'd love to hear your perspective. So at any rate, that kind of wraps up our listener feedback. But thanks again for writing, and if you want to write us or contact us in any way, there are lots of ways to do it. And one of them is through the website's Contact Me section. And we also have a voicemail line, which I am trying to get to as we speak, just to remember, because I can't remember the numbers. But you can get to us through, like I said, the Contact Me, or you can dial our phone number at 406 Pod of OA. That's 406-763-6362. And that basically will allow you to leave, I think it's a 1 or 2 minute voicemail. So we'd love to hear from people and hear what you have to say. And, if you're liking the Green Lantern books and you want to say why you like it, I'd love to hear your feedback. I'd love to hear what you find interesting in it. Because maybe that would help me get over my, what I feel about the stories.
This is Robert Vendetti, and you're listening to the podcast of OA.
Well, Bill, the last set of books we're going to talk about are Hal Jordan and the Green Lantern Corps number 6 through 8. So this is the end of Sinestro's Law and the start of Bottled Light, which is the second arc in Robert Venditti's run. And I'm sure people know how I think about it, what I think about it. But what do you think about it?
I think it's a really good, I guess if you want to say reintroduction with the Rebirth, or a good launch from Rebirth, that, we get back to like Hal and Sinestro right away. We're now really kind of getting into new functions of the ring that we didn't expect, and we're seeing Hal become the living embodiment of Will. We're getting old characters back with Ganthet and Sade,
yep. Mm-hmm.
Sade. And, Sinestro getting back to that, being an evil, fear-mongering Sinestro, which got picked up right from that Sinestro, from the Sinestro comic. I think Venditti did a good job keeping him the way he was. And so, and even like that real epic battle between these two to kind of start off and get us going, and really liking, focusing on the core too. So it was great to see this kind of, I want to say it was epic, but it didn't feel too epic. Do you know where I'm going with that?
Yeah. It wasn't like Sinestro Corps epic.
Yeah, exactly. It was like, I was satisfied by what happened, and how coming out of that. So I have to say this. I didn't know what to expect with Venditti staying on, but it's been a good run and great what we're seeing, what the core is going through, and it's not all Hal Jordan.
Right. Yeah,
I'm liking it.
Yeah, I really did like it, and I liked. Venditti is he's very cerebral in a way. When Hal was fighting the Sinestro Corps guys a couple issues ago, he held back because he was afraid to go full power because of the fact that he was surrounded by people. And you see a definite callback to that where Sornik Natu is the sneaky one who gets everybody out, and Hal's free to be full powered. And you just see in issue 6 Hal going after Sinestro and his core and just throwing himself at everybody. And it was just, I don't know, to me this was the best written Hal Robert Venditti has done, I think, since he took over the book. And you see Hal being the brave guy who throws himself at the odds. The odds don't matter. He goes into it with the confidence that he's going to get through it all. And that's echoed in Guy Gardner when he's being tortured, and even though he's being taken care of by Alyssa Drack, and he even says to Alyssa Drack at one point, the way you look is killing me. Even though he's all beat up and bloodied and in a bloody pulp, you just kind of see how these guys he really has channeled each guy. Each one of them has their own voice. I think if there was anything about the ending of the story that was maybe a little disappointing for readers, was the fact that the Corps didn't get to do anything. They showed up at the very end. But I think it was crucial for this first arc for Hal to finish that journey with the story of all the other power, and it needed to be Hal and Sinestro. It just did. I mean, they're one of the top 10 hero-villain relationships in comics as far as I'm concerned, and I think CBR actually did a thing recently and put it in the top 10 as well, between Marvel and DC, and it was one of the top rivalries going. And to see them go at it, you've got Sinestro with the Parallax power and Hal overcharged and going at it. And even the covers for 6 and 7 are mirror opposites of each other. Rafa Sandoval, this was a great showcase for his artwork. And you see it all the way through. It was spectacular from beginning to end. And, there's some question at the end. Did Hal die? Where did he go? And it gets answered in the issue that just came out this week, where Sornik Natu is telling the Green Lantern Corps that Hal became Will. And what happened to him. And this new issue, Bottled Light, Part 1, Ethan Van Sciver's back on the book for a couple of issues. And it just looks spectacular. And to see the return of Starro, and that two-page spread of Starro is just amazing. The amount of detail. It's so... Starro just looks so awesome in that book. I mean, I'm almost kind of speechless with it. It just looks spectacular, and you've got Venditti still playing off of, Sornik Natu interacting with the Green Lanterns for the first time, and that reunion goes exactly like we thought it would. The Greens don't trust her, and it's falling back on that relationship between Iolande and Sornik Natu that helps kind of bridge the gap, but they're not... she's not taking John at his word as the core leader. She's not going to answer to him. She's gone beyond that. She can't go back home again, essentially.
And that's, I think, where it separates itself from like a Green Lanterns. It is a little bit, the relationships between the characters are a little bit more in depth. Yeah.
Now, one of the things that I've held back was, a few episodes ago, when I interviewed Robert Venditti. He told me about Brainiac and Starro, and I had to keep it quiet because he was off mic, and he'd let me know, and he's like, but you can't tell anybody. And I'm like, oh God, I want to let people know about Brainiac, but I can't tell anybody. But when you turn the page and see that Brainiac is the one behind them being captured, I just thought that was so cool. And Brainiac's not a character that has a lot of history with the Green Lantern Corps. Neither is Starro, really. Starro's major impact with Green Lanterns was during the formation of the Justice League. He was the first major villain that the Justice League fought. And I think there's been maybe a couple of small entanglements with him, but this was the first time we really saw it. It was neat to see Venditti mine kind of the history of the DC Universe. One of the things I wanted to ask you, though, is... And I know the answer to this question, and I think anybody who's looked at the solicitations knows it already as well. But at one point the Brainiac says the Grand Collector will be pleased, and I think I told you off mic who the Grand Collector is. But did you have any ideas of who that person might have been? Even though I told you.
Yeah, no, I did not. Brainiac was kind of I don't want to say a shock, but I was like, I think it was a good fit. It was a serendipitous.
Yeah, I thought that was cool. Now, The other thing I thought that was really neat is we see Hal's ring. You notice Hal's ring doesn't find anybody else. He's looking for Hal. I'm assuming it's because Hal forged the ring. And he finds Ganthet. Do you think there's a particular reason why it might have gone to Ganthet?
Ganthet probably knows what he has to do with what Hal's situation is.
Yeah.
Hal probably has that whole Volthoom thing he's living off. He
Yeah.
has to start building like Will.
Yeah, I think Hal basically the ring, because it's made of Hal's will, probably realizes. I mean, Hal's one of the few people that knows that Ganthet is still alive. Ganthet, above all the Guardians, is the one that Hal would trust to help him get out of the situation. And in my mind, it's what's the common denominator between Hal and Ganthet? It's Kyle. And what can Kyle do with his White Lantern ring? He can heal and supposedly, do some miraculous things. If Hal is, and this is what I'm saying, is that Hal is trapped in the emotional spectrum. Who better to get him out than Kyle, and who better to get Kyle than Ganthet? So that's kind of where I think it's going. But that's just my speculation hat on.
And Sade is just there for eye candy.
But I'm really looking forward to this arc. I think it's exciting to see the Green Lanterns face off against some other villains. The Grand Collector, I'm not going to say who he is, even though I know, because I don't want to spoil it for people who don't look at the solicitations. But the Grand Collector is a very logical choice and logical name for this individual that we're going to see. And I'll kind of leave it at that. Orange, you glad I didn't tell you. But I've loved this series. This is the one book I look forward to amongst all the books I read. I don't read just Green Lantern books. I read some of the other DC books, and I read some other third-party books, independent publisher books. And this is the third Zero Comics plug. But there are other books that I like to read. But this is the book this is my go-to, and I really think that the Hal Jordan and the Green Lantern Corps book, people that might have been leery about Robert Venditti and maybe they didn't like the first part of his run, I think this is so much different because he's been given all the toys to play with, and nobody from DC editorial is telling him he can't use certain things, even after he's gotten plots written. Some more off the mic chat. But I think that people need to give it a chance if they haven't. And from a visual perspective, I think that Rafa Sandoval and Ethan Van Sciver are kind of like DC's top art team, and at least in my opinion right now, because they're just both killing it. I wish that they would make a decision about how Sonic Natu's hair is supposed to look. But other than that, I really have no... when it comes to any of that stuff. And I love... I
kind of like her hair, like the more like up, more fuller. It's been looking very flat along the head. That's just me. I'm sorry. That's what I pay attention to.
You're a hair man. Yeah,
I'm a hair guy.
The one of the things I wanted to point out too is Ethan pulls out characters from Green Lantern history and throws them in, and one of the characters that I saw in this issue was Rotlot Fan, which is one of my favorites of all time. And for those that don't know who Rotlot Fan is, do a little research online, but he's basically a blind Green Lantern character, and so everything is sound for him. And he's just a really neat character. But Ethan drew him in this issue, and I don't know whether he's going to be used for something in particular, or what the issue is, but I thought it was kind of cool that he decided to include him in the issue. I'm trying to find the actual panel so I can describe it for people.
So Starro releases these like leeches.
Yep, starlings. Yeah.
What do? Do they put them in a trance, or is it like a?
It's kind of like a mind control thing. So you kind of become one of them, mind controlled by them.
Okay, like hive mind.
Yeah, kind of. Yep. And it was neat to see Zudar, because Zudar, that's Tomar Ray and Tomar 2's homeworld. It was nice to see them together. And I found that panel. It's the panel where John and those guys leave Mogo. And below John, you'll see a character who does not have a Green Lantern logo. He has a bell on his chest instead of a Green Lantern logo, and it's the F-sharp bell. But very interesting character. He's got kind of an unusual character design, but he's really cool. I may have to do a Green Lantern 101 for him because he's one of the most unique characters in the Corps' history. But it was cool to see Ethan kind of mine some of those things and bring them out. And one of the things that Robert Venditti was saying was that, Rafa Sandoval's creating a bunch of new Yellow Lanterns he's got to create backstories for, like the giant gorilla and those kind of things. So I'm loving the book. I'm glad that it's bi-weekly and we're getting 2 issues a month, because I think if it was 1 issue a month, it would feel terribly decompressed, if that makes sense. But I think, when you think about the fact you're getting 2 issues in a month, it's almost like having, back in the old days, having Green Lantern and Green Lantern Corps as 2 separate books. So from that perspective, we're getting what we kind of used to get before, just that they're homogenized together. And that's cool. That's okay. I think Venditti's doing a good job at juggling things. I think the reason why we didn't see more of the Corps in the last story was that the A plot, if you will, was Hal and Guy. And right. I think the A plot for this one's going to be Hal and John. And this was giving John a chance to lead and John a chance to have more panel time versus being the guy off panel saying, well, we're almost there, and continuing to fly towards the conflict and never getting to it. This got a chance to see him interact with Soren Ignatu, show his leadership a little bit more, and go off and do some stuff. And so I think that's a really good thing. I think Robert's challenge is to keep people who are fans of one character over the other, keep them all happy. It's hard to do in one book, but when you've got 2 issues a month, that's probably better. It at least gives us a little bit of everything.
Honestly, it's we talked about this before when we were looking at 6 books in the Green Lantern universe, that we were like, we need to narrow it down. We need to pare it down. I think this is a good kind of pulling on the brakes and kind of not. It's still almost like having 3 books, really, because they're twice a week. Twice a month. Mm-hmm. And so, but it's the same storyline. You're really engaged with these characters. I'm sure there are hardcore fans of Hal, hardcore fans of John, hardcore fans of Kyle, but I don't know if anybody could really complain with this issue. I think they do well enough where, yeah, you may go a couple issues where your character doesn't get the spotlight as well as you would like, but when they do, they get a good one, Yeah.
I think even as much as that last story was a lot about Hal fighting Sinestro, Guy got some of the best scenes, even though it wasn't as much page count. His scenes were awesome. I just thought.
No, they were. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And John Stewart, when he's like, "I'm Green Lantern Supreme. Do what I'm doing."
Yeah.
He took charge. That was the first time you saw, I think, in a long time that we've seen. And we've seen budding moments of John Stewart doing kind of like taking a command leadership role. But that was the first time I ever heard. I believe that was a line. I don't think I'm off base in that. I'm Green Lantern Supreme.
I think so. I don't remember the issue, but yeah. So we'll be back after the break and wrap things up.
This is Giancarlo Volpe, producer of Green Lantern, the animated series, and you're listening to the podcast of OA.
So, Myron, that completes episode 108. We've covered a lot from Green Lantern's little baking cookies to a whole new ring and a whole new villain, and to Hal Jordan becoming the living embodiment of will, and, the Venditti really taking off with this Hal Jordan the Green Lantern. So, I think we're on an upswing here. I don't know.
Yeah, October was a good month for the books for the most part. And, so we're approaching the end of the year, and it'll be 6 months into Rebirth, and things are looking pretty good. I'm like I said, I'm really happy with the Hal Jordan the Green Lantern Corps book, and I'm really excited about seeing what's coming next down the road.
Absolutely.
So this wraps up episode 108. We'll be back again soon, and we've got some things in the works, including an interview with Mike Johnson, who wrote the first Green Lantern Star Trek crossover, and he's going to be back on again to talk about the second one. And we also may be doing a commentary track for the Green Lantern movie with someone who worked on the film. So we've got a few things in the works, so we hope you stick around. And Bill, you got anything else to say before we wrap it up?
No, I think I think we're good. I think we just got to keep them coming.
Absolutely. So until next time, take care of each other, keep your rings charged, and make every day your brightest day. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye. The Podcast of OA is the official podcast of the blog of OA and a proud member of the Comics Podcast Network. Share your comments and questions by calling the show's voicemail line at 406-POD-OA. That's 406-763-6362. And Skype users can leave a voicemail on the show's account, Blog of OA. Emails can be sent to greenlantern@stny.rr.com. And you can also find the Blog of OA and the Podcast of OA on Facebook and Google+. Green Lantern and other related characters are the copyrighted property of DC Comics Incorporated and are used without permission. The Blog of OA and the Podcast of OA are fan productions and do not claim any ownership over the Green Lantern or any other copyrighted properties.